Welcome to the Pint Glass Football Podcast.
What's up, PGF Nation? We are back. Brian Kelly out at LSU. Is Sark leaving Texas for the NFL? Major coaching jobs open in college football. Are there three new contenders in the AFC? Is Vanderbilt, yes, Vanderbilt, a national title contender? Big week of NFL and college football. I'm your host, Brad Fowler. Joining me as always, my co-host, Alex Higdon. Alex, what is going on?
Hey, Brad, kind of a slow week. However, it was national tight ends, weekend, and a lot of tight ends showed up. One is actually showing out today as we speak, and one, Travis Kelce. I think the biggest thing that was this weekend, and it wasn't a game, was the firing of Brian Kelly. Outside of the gambling stuff in the NBA, but it's been the firing of Brian Kelly.
Yeah. Rough week for the NBA, man. You know it's bad when you turn on football podcasts, or I listen to a lot of NFL radio on Sirius XM, stations and channels that are dedicated to football, and they're talking about it. That's when you know it is a major news story. So yeah, it's been a rough week for Adam Silver and the guys in the NBA, but lucky for us, we've got football to talk about. So let's jump into it. Like you said, Brian Kelly's out. What a major move that was. We'll jump into all that. Some big time college football news as well. But I want to start in the NFL. Kind of a rough weekend, Alex. I'm not even going to try to sell it as anything other than that. Not the best weekend of NFL football. A lot of blowout wins, not very many compelling games at all, but still some compelling storylines to get to. I want to start with the Sunday Night Football game. Packers-Steelers. I think on paper this looked like it might be a really good game, and it kind of started out as a good game, but Packers pull away late, kind of flex in the second half. I think this is the Green Bay team we've been kind of waiting to see. I know they played well this year, and their record tells you that they're a really good team, but it's always felt like that we haven't seen a complete game from them yet. This felt like maybe the breakout game for them. Jordan Love dialed in. Watching this game, so many weapons. They're deep at wide receiver. They're deep at tight end. Tucker Kraft, of course, went crazy. Christian Watson comes back. 4 catches, 85 yards in his first game back since tearing his ACL. He gives them another dimension if he can stay on the field. Micah Parsons, of course, was causing all kinds of problems up front for that Steelers O-line. I think this is a legit Super Bowl contender. This is a team that I thought would come into Super Bowl form, and they look like a team that could be dangerous in the NFC. Only thoughts here I have on Pittsburgh before I get your thoughts on this game, Alex, was watching this team experiment with this run-heavy 12, 13 personnel offense. I think that offense is great when you have a lead, but they lack explosive plays. They clearly don't have a very dynamic offense, and they're really only built to win one way. So this is a perfect example of where it looks good when you've got the lead, but once you fall behind, you're in big trouble. And this is a defense that I'm really starting to have some question marks about. They've been getting torched the last couple of weeks, bringing in some older guys in the secondary. Does not look like it's paying off. They look slow. They're having trouble staying with these young receivers. I think Pittsburgh's in some real trouble, and they've got a contender coming into Pittsburgh next week, so this could really go off the rails for them.
Yeah, and I think with Pittsburgh, like you said, watching through the game, it appeared that they were going to be able to hang tough, but then some costly turnovers or fumbles, kind of set them back. So, and like you said, to your point, we don't have a lot of explosive plays and you have one explosive player. And then speaking to that, to your point, they actually brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling today, a guy who we know is a deep threat as well and a big receiver. So now you have 2 guys on the boundaries, and then maybe you could work the middle with those tight ends and or Roman Wilson in a sense as a slot, or Calvin Austin there. So maybe you can do some things there. But I think they're going to struggle until they really truly find some type of a consistent running game. I'm not saying they have to have 150 yards rushing, but I think that's also part of the problem. Deshaun Elliott also getting hurt on the defensive side is going to be huge. He looked like there's some type of knee issue. I'm not sure if they made an update today, but when you don't have safeties, you can't really go cover 2. We've been talking about, I don't want to say the demise, but the natural downward maturation of Jalen Ramsey, who could and should probably move the safety at this point, and it could probably be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro level player there to help them out while they have younger guys at the cornerback position. So, but I will say this on the Green Bay side, outside of like not having not a big time running game, only 3.6 yards per carry, they were firing all cylinders. Even when even when Pittsburgh did get to them, that floater that went to Tucker Kraft for like a 40-yard gain out of nowhere, like everything was just falling in their favor. They could do no wrong. And speaking of Tucker Kraft, he is also my player of the week with 7 catches, 143 and 2 TDs, once again on National Tight Ends Week or Day or whatever they want to call it.
Yeah, he was going crazy in this game. They just didn't have any answers, and this was just another example of, everybody talks about Shanahan and McVay and some of these great young play callers. I think sometimes we forget about LaFleur and how good this guy really is an offensive play caller coming from that Shanahan-McVay tree. But this guy really deserves credit in his own right because he's had this offense clicking for years now, and he seems to know exactly what strings to pull at the right times, and he really had it going versus this Pittsburgh defense that tried to make adjustments, and it seemed like he was one step ahead. Let's go to Cowboys-Broncos. This was a game. I like Denver in this game. This is a game that I picked as one of my bets last week when we did our betting preview podcast. Look, Bo Nix, he was dialing it up. Basically, everybody does against the Cowboys, let's be honest. But he looked sharp, 4 touchdown passes, finally found some downfield accuracy. Once again, Cowboys not a great defense, a lot of guys running wide open, but good to see him kind of making some shots downfield and not just underneath stuff. Got the running backs going. Can you believe it, Alex? Sean Payton gets the running game going.
Finally. J.K.
Dobbins, R.J. Harvey, the young rookie that we both really like, they combined for 157 on the ground. Very complete-looking game plan for them. I mean, this game was over in the second quarter. I mean, it didn't – the score might have not have told you that, but you could just feel that Dallas had no answers at all. Dak came out, really played probably his first really bad game all year. And I think it has a lot to do with this defense. This Denver defense is legit. And the more I look at this Denver's Broncos roster, I think it's one of the most complete teams in the NFL. And when I look at, this matchup, it was just a roster mismatch. Cowboys roster is just nowhere near the team that we see in Denver. And the glaring hole that I think has really come back to haunt them was, swapping out Micah Parsons for Kenny Clark. It looked good on paper. It has not fixed the issues up front for Dallas. They still can't stop anybody in the middle.
Well, I'll say this. Looking at that game yesterday, to me, the glaring issue has been a glaring issue even when they did have a pass rush and no linebackers, because Sean Payton with the run game, he attacked the edges. He didn't attack the middle of the line. He attacked the edges. The edges with R.J. Harvey running outside, J.K. Dobbins running outside. There's no sideline to sideline linebacker. I know Overshawn is practicing, so hopefully he can come back, but they were just beating them side the speed to the edge. They had and there's no containment. One thing about DeMarcus Lawrence, he was a full-on defensive end. He could contain and hold his block and play the run. Now with the younger guys, these guys are more pass rushers, speed upfield rushes, and they could play bully ball with them a little bit. But I know the Denver defense is good, but let's look at the injury report. I'm not sure if you saw it, but Patrick Surtain is going to be out, probably going on IR. They're trying to hold off with a pectoral strain, I believe. And if you tear your pec, you're done for the year. So he's going to end up missing the next 4 games. So we'll see how that changes the scope of the defense. Not an edge rusher, but a guy that shuts down an entire side of the field. So now you can flow your defensive coverage certain ways, and that is a huge blow for their best defensive player.
Let's shift here. Chicago, look, they came into this game hot. Ravens back against the wall, absolutely had to have this win, and they played like a team that had to have this win. I want to talk about Chicago mostly, though. How concerned should we be with Caleb Williams at this point?
I'm not that concerned. I think the concern is because of how the hype that was before he even played. This is a guy that was considered Patrick Mahomes 2.0. When you say that, you know what comes with that. So I think if you then readjust to where he is, now can he simply just be a franchise quarterback? And I remember I was watching Colin Cowherd the other day. He actually put up a stat that was very interesting, is that Ben Johnson's first year with Jared Goff and Ben Johnson's first year with Caleb, statistically they're the same. Now the reads may be different. Caleb needs to speed up, but this is just Caleb's second year. Once again, you know how I am, Brad, about quarterbacks. That's going to be a very critical year, because right now, the issues that I was having with him last year is the issue I'm having with him this year. He is consistently not using the tight ends. You can't have Cole Kmet and then a first-round pick and Colston Loveland, and neither one of them are being used. They have to get these guys involved, or they're going to have to trade some people because there's too many. Luther Burton, DJ Moore, Roma Dunzier, DeAndre Swift, Cole Kmet. There's too many weapons. I think they need to go to simplify some things, get rid of some, not necessarily because they're bad players, get rid of some guys, and he needs to really work on his intermediate game, specifically with the tight end. That's the part of his game. It's the biggest part of his game that's missing.
Yeah, two things there. One, I think we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but they really missed not taking Tyler Warren. What a game changer that guy would be in this offense. And look, that's not a shot at Colston Loveland. He's a good player, but Warren was clearly the pick here, and I don't think it's even close because that guy has been unstoppable. He might be the best tight end in the league right now as a rookie. He is unbelievable. So could you imagine having a guy like that as an outlet for a guy like Caleb? But I'm with you, and I'm not, by no means am I ready to give up on him either, but I am a little bit concerned because I did think he'd be a little further along by this point in the season. I thought we'd kind of start to see it click, but I don't think it's a natural fit with him and Ben Johnson. And so I do think there's some growing pains here to get this offense going. But look, he's a young guy, he's still developing. His rookie year was kind of a throwaway year because of all the chaos that he dealt with in Chicago. So I think there's still some things to build on here, but it's been a little rocky these last couple of games. And look, looking at the Ravens side of this, John Harbaugh, coming off of a bye, 15-3, a guy that had this Ravens team ready to go. And I think that really says a lot for a team that comes in with a 1-5 mark. People can be critical of Harbaugh, and I get that, but they clearly play for this guy. They clearly believe in this guy and this coaching staff, because there's a lot of teams that would have folded up the tent, and these guys came in ready to play, still believing that they can put something together. And here's the crazy thing is the Ravens now with the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of falling back. We saw the Bengals, lose a crazy game to the Jets, and all of a sudden, don't look now, but the Ravens have pulled within 2 games of the AFC North lead. Believe it or not, they are now the odds-on betting favorite in Vegas to win the AFC North, which is crazy to think about.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Look, they might be able to, because they're going to get a lot of these guys back. And we know Lamar's coming back this week. We know how special of a player he is alone. But when some of these defensive guys start coming back, and we saw the difference, even a guy like Roquan Smith made coming back for that defense and just how much better they looked, they might have saved their season. I mean, that's how big this one. We could actually look back at some point. If they go on a run, this could be the turning point for this team. And I wouldn't count them out. I certainly would not count them out. But I think this was a missed opportunity for the Bears. Just came out not ready for this big spotlight. And look, when you're a young team and you're playing some good ball, but you're still trying to establish yourself in this league, don't go posting pictures, trolling the Ravens about playing ping pong and all that. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, seriously, guys, like, what are you doing? You don't poke the bear. All right. Now, speaking of young quarterbacks, how good is Drake Maye? How good is Drake Maye? My goodness, Alex, every time I watch this guy, I'm thinking, look, is he a top 10 quarterback right now?
Yeah, he definitely is. This season, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like right now. I mean, we're not talking all-time rankings or ranking guys based on full resumes here. We know he's a young guy. This is just year 2 for him too. But as far as the way he's playing right now, it's hard to think of 10 guys who are playing the position better than he is right now. And look, I know I was a little higher on him coming out of UNC than you were, but we both thought that this is a guy who had real upside. And we talked about it when he came out of North Carolina. We said he's not going to be a guy that's going to necessarily hit the ground running, because he wasn't a Jaden Daniels or a Bo Nix or a Penix who came in with a bunch of starts, 5 years of college football. He wasn't that guy. He was a guy that we knew a little bit younger of a prospect and a guy who didn't have as many starts under his belt. And so it might take a little bit for him to kind of make that jump. This is the year 2 jump that we expected to see from Caleb Williams, to be honest. This is kind of what we thought. And we're seeing it from Drake Maye, and he looks like the real deal. I mean, the accuracy, the poise, the decision-making, the athletic ability to escape the pocket, but knowing when to escape. He's been really good at, taking care of the football. And here's the other thing, Alex. We know that Josh McDaniels isn't getting another head coaching job in the NFL, right?
Nope.
Like we know that's probably not happening. Yeah. So when you think about from a stability standpoint, of him probably having this guy for a long time, that stability and learning this system is going to be a huge benefit for Drake Maye going forward. Look, the Browns, they're not a great team, but that's a pretty good defense, and he looked pretty sharp in this game.
Yeah, and as we saw that lonely picture of Myles Garrett. Sorry, Myles Garrett, I don't feel sorry for you. I know you want to win, but you signed the contract. You perhaps have an opportunity to get out. and you did it. You took the check. So now, you have to be a teammate similar to what Joe Thomas was. You know what Cleveland is, respectfully. I'm a Raiders fan, so I understand right now. But you signed up for this, so you knew what it was. You could not have thought the outlook could have looked any different when it was from the first time you got there as a draftee to when you signed your first contract to now your third contract. So you knew what this was going to be. So I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy there. But however, I do want you to continue on. The youngest player to get to, 130 sacks? I believe 100 sacks before Reggie White, so he can possibly challenge for the Bruce Smith title at some point in time. But I also want to mention, I know we talked about really quick with the Patriots, Drake Maye. A lot of applause needs to go to Kayshon Boutte. This guy's 6th-round pick coming in, working his tail off. He's gotten better and better every single year from the time he was drafted to where he is now, coming out that LSU. Now they may have another receiver because he's on track to have about 1,000 yards.
Another team I want to talk about here, because I specifically mentioned a few teams here, Alex. The Broncos, the Patriots, and the Colts, because I think we've got 3 teams in the AFC who are all starting to look like contenders, at least for their division, with the Patriots for sure. I think Denver looks like a team that's certainly a contender in their division, and maybe more than that. And the Colts, look, are they a Super Bowl contender? Is it too far? Is it too soon to say that they're a legit Super Bowl contender right now?
It's always going to be too far, and let's just be fair, when Daniel Jones is your quarterback. This is probably really the first true time that Daniel Jones has looked like he's playing at this level. We know the playoff year that he had with Saquon, where he only threw 15 TDs and 5 interceptions, if I'm not mistaken. He's already surpassed that. The rushing total on the ground and as well as in the air already. So Daniel Jones is having an all-pro / Pro Bowl type of year, comeback player of the year. There's a couple of awards that he could win this year, but again, if you go back to our predictions, I had predicted that the Colts would win this division, and I said they had gone 9-8 and 8-9 the past 2 previous seasons with Anthony Richardson. If Anthony Richardson is trashed by most people's standards, they needed somebody just to come in and just do this, just steady the boat, and that's what he's coming. They've always had a bend don't break defense, and they've had weapons on offense, and you see what type of weapon Jonathan Taylor is when he's at 12 carries for 153 yards. They're not going to give him the MVP, but he should be in the MVP. He should be in the MVP voting.
Yeah, I was actually going to get to that. I think Jonathan Taylor has officially entered the MVP conversation. He's been absolutely unstoppable. The only thing I'm going to push back on with Daniel Jones is you are right. They needed a quarterback to quote unquote stabilize the position, but he has been more than a stabilizer.
But yeah, he's exceeded that. Yeah,
he has elevated his play to heights that I don't think even the biggest Daniel Jones supporters thought that he could reach.
Except one.
Yeah, we have a good friend, Quick, who I'm sure is probably going to watch this episode, and he has been a Daniel Jones believer since day one. But look, Daniel Jones and the play calling of Shane Steichen this season has been lights out. And I just mentioned how, LaFleur doesn't get enough love for what he does on that side of the ball. Shane Steichen is entering that conversation as one of the best play callers in the NFL. And like I said, forget about the South, forget about the playoffs. I think they are a legit Super Bowl contender. I'm really starting to think so, because this right now, from what I've seen, and it's early and they aren't proven, they don't have the pelts on the wall like the Chiefs. They don't have the playoff experience of the Bills or the Ravens, right? They haven't entered that group yet. We haven't seen what this team can do in these big games yet, to be fair. But from what we've seen right now, sitting right here tonight, this is the most complete football team in the NFL. And they aren't just winning games, they are crushing teams. And that's what really, really good teams do. They bury teams. And this team just looks like a force right now. So I am really excited to see this thing continue as the year goes on. Now, we've got some big-time college football to get to. Hey, you got another game you want to get to?
No. I just want to mention, hey, welcome back, Saquon Barkley. I don't have him in fantasy. I'm sure fantasy people are happy. I'm sure Philadelphia fans are happy. I'm sure he's happy. Welcome back. That first run for 65 yards, I said, okay, now it looks like he's finally going to get off the schneid of, I had been talking about him not having 100 total yards all season long. Now they've been attacking the outside and putting him in space and doing some things with him. So now this may be a turning point for Philadelphia, because I said they've been looking like 2023. This looks like a full turning point, because if you get him going, now, as they say, you cook him with grease.
Well, the bye week came at the right time, I think, and they were able to kind of make some adjustments. And, during bye weeks, a lot of NFL teams do a lot of self-scouting. And that's usually when you kind of come in, you look at the playbook, and you look at what you've been doing the first part of the season. You say, okay, what's working, what's not, and you kind of filter some things out. At least that's what the good teams do. And it does look like maybe that's what they did. And it looks like they've kind of redialed this thing in. Be interesting to see. Now, I did hear some reports that he's got a hamstring issue after this game. I don't think it's major. I don't think he's going to miss time, but it is something to monitor for sure.
Yeah. And finally getting Tank Bigsby on the field. They had 200-yard rushers. So if he does need some time to mend, at least they have another guy they've gotten in that got 100 yards. And also, I guess finally and lastly, on a sad note, Scatterball. Man, I was looking at you. Were a lot of fun. You were a lot of fun to watch this season. And shout out to the Philadelphia fans, and because they booed Santa Claus and booed Beyonce. Shout out to Big Don, bring him some cheesesteaks in the hospital.
Yeah, no, that is really sad, because he has been one of the cool rookie stories of this NFL season. He's been absolutely awesome to watch. I know, look, you've been talking about this guy since Arizona State last year. He's been your guy. You've loved watching this guy. I love watching this guy, and he's been really good. I think, we liked him coming out of college, but I think he's been even better than we thought he would be in the pros. Really unfortunate, especially when you've got this young quarterback who's starting to flash, starting to do some things. You already lose Malik Neighbors. Now you lose a rookie running back that was looking like a guy you could build around. Really unfortunate for them. The last thing I'll say about this game is get rid of the tush push already. My goodness. They can't even officiate this call, or this play, I should say. And it's a stupid play to begin with. Nobody likes it outside of Philadelphia fans. It's boring. It's ugly. It doesn't look like football. It looks like rugby. Get this stupid play out of the NFL already. It's ridiculous. You get a strip fumble on the play, and then somehow they blow it dead. There's guys offsides every play. It's just a nightmare. They got to get rid of this play. I'm sure it's going to be gone this offseason. They should have done it this season. All right, that's my tush push rant. Just get this crap out of the league. Before we move on to college football, I got to give out my game ball, Alex. And look, this week, my NFL game ball is going to go to Bills running back James Cook, 216 yards rushing, 11.4 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns. And look, this was a game that you look at the score and you look at the teams, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, the Bills and the Panthers, they blew them out, whatever. But this was a trendy upset pick. There was a lot of people in the betting community, a lot of analysts who thought, circle this game. Yep, because the Panthers were playing some good ball, and there was a lot of people that thought the physicality that they play with might be able to. No, the Bills came out and punched them in the mouth. So, yeah, big shout out to them, because when they have balance, they're dangerous.
And to have some fun with it, I had a guy that I was going against in fantasy who forgot that he had a Puka Nacua and a couple guys on the bye. However, he had Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, and James Cook, and beat me by 40 points.
Oh, man, that's why I don't play fantasy football anymore. Right there, that exact reason. Makes you want to throw your phone through a TV. All right. College football. Look, we talked about it here in the intro. We got to get to it because this is the big story. There's no doubt about it. Brian Kelly fired at LSU. Look, it's not completely shocking. They got curb stomped, and I think the writing was on the wall.
Yeah.
I think, the seat was already hot. But then when you go into Death Valley at night against a team that, quite frankly, you don't see as your equal, even though, and it's not a shot at Texas A&M, they've been playing great football. But we're talking about historic equals here, right? You're a blue blood. They're an up-and-comer. So LSU does not see this as acceptable to get stomped out at home by a team like that. And look, we talked about it. This was the big put-up-or-shut-up year for 2 big programs. We talked about it in the offseason going into this year. Penn State and LSU. This was the now-or-never seasons for these guys. Both head coaches are gone before November. This program was headed in the wrong direction. I think that was clear. It was the right time. I understand the move. It got me thinking about this, Alex. So USC and LSU hired Lincoln Riley and Brian Kelly right around the same time. At the time, those were seen as home run hires. And then to a lesser degree, but still kind of viewed similarly. Luke Fickell gets hired at Wisconsin. It was seen as a home run fit, perfect fit. Same with Norvell at Florida State. Not going well for those guys either. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of rumors that they could both be out by the time the season's over. Then you look at teams, Kirk Cignetti gets hired at Indiana, no buzz. Mike Elko gets hired at Texas A&M, not really seen as a splashy hire. Dan Lanning gets hired at Oregon. Most casual fans didn't even know who he was. There is one sure thing that we know when hiring a head football coach is that you don't know who's going to be great or not. There is no sure thing. There's no lock. And no matter how good they look on paper, you just don't know. And I know this, LSU, they better get it right.
Right. So I'll say this. The big one in this whole kerfuffle of coaches, his name is Lane Kiffin, because now sky's the limit. One, he's done a great job at Ole Miss. He has to leave. You cannot turn down Florida and LSU and stay at Ole Miss. You cannot. This is your opportunity. Yeah, yes, I'm positive. You cannot turn either.
I don't know.
You have to take. If he stays where he is, then he's not interested in winning, because Florida's not going to get it wrong. And I know that's my team, but they're not going to get it wrong too much longer. And now that LSU is in the mix, I believe that Lane Kiffin, if he does leave, it'll be a bidding war between us two, but I think he will more than likely lean towards LSU for the most part. And then I would go look at Syracuse's coach to bring him in. That's be probably my second choice. But those two programs and the capital that is held in those two states is too rich to pass up, because I believe he's gonna max himself out at Ole Miss. Now you can stay at Ole Miss and continuously win 10 games and go to the playoffs perhaps, or whatever that is. But if you're talking about winning a title, you have to go where the capital is. The capital, even though it's small in that boot called Louisiana, but there's a hell of a lot of talent in there. And obviously we know what Florida is. Those two places, the recruiting capital that you would have there, you would strike gold. And plus with Florida State being out, they're not going to attract the big coach like we or LSU would in the SEC.
So the only pushback I would have on this is LSU doesn't have the same level of finances.
That's true. That is true.
So let's talk about it for a sec. So 3 big blue blood programs are open all at the same time, which is pretty crazy. We've got Penn State, we have Florida, and now LSU joins this list. LSU, like I said, is great of a job as that is, and it is. Yeah, it's a great job, and so I'm not trying to disrespect what LSU is.
This is about the money. This is the money.
But last I checked, Ole Miss spends more on their roster than LSU does.
Yes,
Ole Miss does. So I know historically LSU is the bigger, brighter program. But the NIL has really changed the landscape here, and how much money you have matters a lot more than we've won this many titles, and this, that stuff doesn't matter as much in this era. So if I'm ranking these jobs, for me, it probably goes Penn State, Florida, LSU, and Florida and Penn State are very close. Mm-hmm. The only reason I would give Penn State a slight edge is because I think it's less of a rebuild. Penn State was humming. This was a team that was already just in the college football playoff last season. They have a lot of, not that Florida has a bad roster or anything, but I feel like Penn State's already closer to a finished product, so to speak, than Florida, where it's a more of a rebuild. Now, LSU has a lot of talent already on hand as well, but they're going to lose a lot of these guys. It's very interesting because I do think you can win at Ole Miss in the modern era. I think in the old, 10 years ago, it would be a no-brainer. Even, we talked about this the other day, Kirk Cignetti, no-brainer. He's taking that Penn State job 10 years ago. There's not even a doubt in my mind he's not staying in Indiana, but he knows that, look, if you're going to back the program with the kind of money that Indiana is backing them with, he knows, look, it's different. I'm in the Big Ten already. I've got the money and the resources to compete with these other big boys. So why not stay right where I am and keep building this thing? And I'm not 100% sure Lane Kiffin isn't thinking the same thing in the SEC right now. It's going to be really fascinating. But here's the other part of it, and I teased this in the intro. Diana Rossini of The Athletic has reported that there are representatives for Steve Sarkisian that have now informed NFL decision makers of his interest in head coaching openings, including the Tennessee Titans. Now, he went off and said, look, this is all false, blah, blah, blah. That's what coaches do.
Yeah, smoke this fire.
Yeah, exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. And if I know one thing, Diana Rossini is not, some random reporter. Yeah. This is a person that has real sources. This is one of the most respected reporters out there. So I know she didn't just pull this out of thin air. And look, I understand why he's looking at the NFL. Look at Texas right now. This has been one of the more disappointing teams in college football. By the way, how are they still ranked?
But it's his fault. It's his fault. You did this.
It absolutely is. But I think he's looking at this thinking like maybe this is the right time to get out, right? Because it hasn't gone the way he thought. Arch isn't developing the way that he thought. Now, look, I'm not saying Arch is going to be a bad player or isn't going to develop.
That's where he is right now.
Yeah, where he is right now, I think Sark thought he'd be further along. The offensive line is struggling. Look, it took 24 fourth quarter points and overtime on Saturday for Texas to beat a bad Mississippi State team. The week before, they squeak by and beat Kentucky late in overtime. Like, these are bottom feeders in the SEC. You're supposed to be a national championship contender, and I think it's safe to say they're not even close to what we thought going into the season. So maybe this is a strike while the iron's hot. We know he has NFL coaching experience, not head coaching experience, but he's coached in the NFL as a coordinator. If Texas opens up, guess what? They just leapfrogged everyone.
Yeah, they did.
Now they're the hands down, no debate in my mind, the number one job in college football. If that job opens up, and we could be looking at one of the craziest coaching carousels in the history of this sport, Alex. I mean, what an offseason this could be. Unbelievable stuff if that actually happens. Now, if you're Sark, do you go to the Titans and all the dysfunction and try to rebuild there with Cam Ward, or do you stick it out with Arch Manning and try to get things back on track with Texas?
I personally think he's best off in Texas. I don't think the NFL longs for him. I'm sure perhaps he's putting himself out there because perhaps the pressure of that Texas job and him fumbling Arch Manning, which is always going to be amazing. If you've been listening to us, I've been saying Texas is done because they should have gotten rid of Quinn Ewers last year and had Arch starting last year with that team. He would be in a much better position this year, which would have less talent, but he'd be more equipped to lead them as opposed to trying to figure out how to play on a week-to-week basis. So he fumbled developing the golden boy for college at this point, for lack of a better term, to only now say to go to Tennessee to now do what? Try to develop another quarterback when you failed and something was handed to you on a silver platter and you messed it up. I don't get this move. I just think that he wants out. He's trying to get out and he doesn't want to do it because he realized he fumbled it and he's feeling a lot of pressure. He's running from the job. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way. And here's the thing. He got all up in arms and said that report was false. But guess what he didn't say? He didn't come out and say, no, I'm not taking that job. So I thought that was very interesting because a lot of times when coaches, are getting linked to job openings that they don't want to be linked to, they'll come out and flat out say, they'll shut it down and say, look, I'm not going to XYZ school or program or whatever. Didn't hear that from him. Very interesting stuff. So that's something to monitor too, especially when we kind of see how Texas ends the season. And remember, they've got Texas A&M at the end of the year too, and we've seen how good that team looks. Look, we're talking about coaches. We talked about Lane Kiffin. He's the hottest name in college football right now. Unbelievable job he's done. So let's talk about this Ole Miss Oklahoma game. This is one of the big top 25 matchups in the SEC. Look, Ole Miss is going to make the college football playoff. Now, I don't know how deep they're going to go in the playoff, but this win, essentially, unless they melt down, this pretty much punched their ticket. This was a big, big win over Oklahoma. And look, I liked Oklahoma in this game at home. I thought that this would be close, and I thought Oklahoma could pull this out mostly because of their defense. This is really one of the best defenses in all of college football, and Ole Miss hung 34 points on this defense on the road. Brent Venables' defense was surrendering an average of 9.4 points per game. That's how good Oklahoma's defense has been, and he lit them up. I was so impressed. Now, quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, this guy has basically come out of nowhere, D2 quarterback that nobody knew anything about, transfers to Ole Miss, and he looks awesome. I mean, he keeps making tight window throws. He does a great job knowing when to throw, when to run. He just has a great feel for this offense, mobility, the ability to create off script. Really impressed with him. Now, quarterback John Matier for Oklahoma, he just doesn't look like the same guy since that thumb injury. He's trying to play, I think, probably not at 100%. Their offense has kind of sputtered a little bit since then. But nonetheless, don't want to take anything away from Ole Miss because this team is dangerous. And look, we just talked about teams that are going to be trying to hire him away. He's at the top of almost everybody's wish list. If you're one of those teams, you better hope that they don't go on a run in the college football playoff. And they might, because the deeper they go in this playoff, the closer they get to that national title, the more it's going to put faith in Lane Kiffin to say, maybe I should just stay put, because he's got it going there in Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see that perspective, but I think I have more thoughts on. But I think we'll give a bonus pod on such things, and give the people some real in-depth talk about that, because I think this is probably going to be one of the craziest college football off seasons that, from a coaching standpoint, that we probably have ever seen. Specifically, if that Florida State job and a few other jobs start to open up, and Texas as well.
Gosh.
Right, like you said.
Yeah.
What I will say about Ole Miss, this, compared to where he was last year with Jackson Dart to where he is now with Trinidad Chandler, what he's doing with this guy. I mean, every time this guy plays and they do well, all I hear is, I see is another Brinks truck backing up. And it's got Florida, it's got LSU, it's got Penn State on it. And it just keeps backing up. They keep backing up. Because like you said, this kid came out of nowhere. And if you're telling me you can now be let's just say a quarterback guru with these type of guys, and with the type of level of talent that you can move on to, and his wife are going to need to go to Bali for a month and just think about what they want to do with the rest of their lives, because the amount of money that he's about to make is going to be ridiculous. And that's not a shot at Ole Miss. This is just simply about opportunity.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Even if he stays at Ole Miss, he's going to get a huge extension. So, because that's the other part of this, right, is that even when these hot names come up for jobs, even if they decide to stay, they leverage that by getting a big extension at the school they're at if they do decide to stay. So no matter what, the Brinks truck is absolutely backing up, whether it's Ole Miss, Florida, wherever, fill in the blank that he ends up deciding on. No doubt about it. Yeah, because he is a guy that we have seen now that is not only a great play designer, not only a great play caller, but he does seem to have this magic touch with quarterbacks. We've seen Matt Corral and other guys that come out of his system that really didn't look like they were ready for the NFL. And there was some criticism. I'm not pointing the finger at me too, because his system doesn't necessarily translate to the NFL. But now we see Jackson Dart come into the league, and he's looking like a guy. Now it's early, but he's looking like a really good young quarterback who was ready to play in his first year. So maybe that narrative is kind of going up in flames too, which I think is also helping his stock rise here, because now if you're a big 4 or 5 star quarterback prospect, let's face it, they all dream of going to the NFL. You can go to a guy like this knowing, hey, he's putting guys in the league and they're having success. So that just helps his track record as well. Another big game I wanted to get to here, Alex, Vanderbilt, Missouri. We talked about Vanderbilt in the intro. Look, are they a national championship contender? Is it too much to think that they are actually in the mix, that they could pull it off? What would be maybe the ultimate Cinderella season of all time? Are they good enough? Can they win the whole thing?
I paused for a moment there because I really had to think about it, because I've rarely seen a Cinderella team like a Vandy come out of nowhere and then kind of take everything over. I mean, we're not going to talk about them, but we can also mention, hell, what happened if Georgia Tech actually ran the table? How crazy would that be? But yeah, no, Vandy, I'm going to have to see them throughout the season. I know that's unfair to Vanderbilt, but because of my thought process and how I look at you, I need you to be consistent throughout the rest of the season. So I think we're going to find out a lot next week, even though Texas is down and we just talked about them being down. I think the Texas, Auburn, and then the Tennessee game, these last 3, that's the 4 games, and they have Kentucky in between those. These last 4 games for Vandy are going to be very important, because we're going to get close to that people on that bubble time. And Vandy is a team that the committee, they don't have to say it out loud. Vandy is a team they would love to kick out, because it would be an easy move out the way for somebody that they, with a name, to get in for ratings purposes. But those 3 games, Texas, Auburn, and Tennessee, if they can hold on and, just say if they only lose 1, they'll make the playoffs. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, because I think they're going to be looking at 2, possibly 3 losses coming up.
Wow. I like their chances in all those games. I mean, Auburn's been a mess. Kentucky's a mess. Texas is nothing to write home about with the way they're playing. Tennessee, I've been saying all year, they're a paper tiger. So I don't know. I will not be surprised if, like you said, they can still afford to drop a game too. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they make a run at this thing. Look, this win against Missouri was impressive.
Yes.
I thought Missouri matched up well against them. Missouri outgained Vanderbilt 376 to 265 yards. Completely outplayed them in a lot of ways. The Missouri Tigers had possession of the football by nearly 13 minutes over Vanderbilt, and they ran 33 more plays on offense. The big difference in this game is Missouri went 1 for 3 in the red zone. That's what really shifted this game. But this was another program-changing win for Vandy to kind of shake that narrative of what they've become these last 2 seasons under Clark Lee, which, by the way, circle that name because he's definitely a guy who's going to be getting a lot of looks by a lot of these big programs. And Diego Pavia, look, he only had 149 yards and a touchdown. I get it. But he should be getting his plane tickets right now to New York because this is a guy who's going to be a Heisman finalist. I don't think there's any doubt about it. What a special year this guy's having. What a special season that Vanderbilt is having because Missouri's a good football team. And once again, Eli Drinkowitz, another guy who's going to get a lot of phone calls because of what he's done at Missouri. He's going to be a guy that I think is going to be in the running for a lot of these top jobs. So definitely a big-time win for them.
Hey, Brad, lastly, before we get out of here, my eye is hurting because I have a headache. Somebody please take out BYU. It's not fair. I'm sorry, BYU fans. Y'all will be all right. Y'all have AJ DeBanter is here. You have basketball. You can't have both. No, I'm not having it. You can't have both. Pick one, either football or basketball. I'll choose for you. It's going to be basketball. Somebody please take out BYU. Please. We're getting too close to the end and they're still undefeated. Somebody's got to take out BYU.
Look, and if I know anything about the Big 12, it will happen because this is a conference that cannibalizes itself every single year. So I do expect them to take an L at some point, but they look pretty good. I got to give them props because, look, your pick, you took Iowa State last week, and I thought it was a great pick because Iowa State was favored in this game. I liked that play, and BYU really pulled away in the second half. And so, yeah, they're a tough football team, but yeah, your hatred for BYU has become hilarious on the show.
Just so we're clear, I'm picking Texas Tech, TCU, Cincinnati, UC. I'm picking every team against BYU. So don't follow on my picks against BYU. It's purely emotional. I'm not looking at a line. I'm just picking against them because it's time. It's enough. We've had enough. And, one other thing before I know we're supposed to wrap with helmet stickers real quick. I don't know what's going on in Colorado, if Deion's quitting, if the team is quitting, or if they're just quitting on each other as a whole, but that was crazy this weekend. That was a complete – it's not about winning and losing. It's about how you look. Are you coming to play? That team was not prepared, and they did not want to play on Saturday. That was crazy.
Yeah, pretty shocking because I can't figure this team out. All the hype and all the goodwill that we've seen from what he's been able to do with this program and all the momentum they had, and with Shedeur, Travis Hunter winning the Heisman, he looked like he had the program absolutely headed in the right direction. This year, it's gone a bit off the rails. They get that big win over Iowa State, but yeah, I'm not really sure what to make of what's going on there. All right, let's wrap it up, Alex, with our college football helmet stickers. We do it every week, just like the NFL game ball. We give out the helmet sticker to a guy we think was the best in college football this week. And look, this week's college football helmet sticker for me, wide receiver KJ Duff for Rutgers. Look at this stat line. 6 receptions, 241 yards receiving, and a touchdown in a big win over Purdue. Hats off to KJ Duff in Rutgers.
Yeah, that sounds like a June Jones special, the run and shoot offense for the most part. I dated myself with that. Nobody knows who I'm talking about. But I took Isaac Brown from Louisville, 14 carries, 205 yards. Yes, it was against Boston College, but only 14 carries and 205 yards and a touchdown. Hats off to you, Isaac Brown.
Love it. All right, guys, if you enjoyed the show, do us a favor. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. But once again, I'm Brad Fowler. He's Alex Higdon. This is Pint Glass Football, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Pint Glass Football Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on Twitter at PGF Podcast.